podemos contarte 175 años de historia en el mundo, donde hemos pasado por guerras, crisis y revoluciones. En Chile ya cumplimos 96 años de vida y también hemos vivido grandes cambios económicos y sociales. Hoy, con el poder de un legado vigente, sabemos cómo actuar junto a nuestros clientes, siempre construyendo confianza. Porque si algo hemos aprendido en estos años, es que si vas solo, tal vez puedas ir más rápido, pero juntos podemos llegar más lejos.
Muy buenos días, soy Bárbara Silva, directora de Singularity U, y les doy la bienvenida a Singularity U Virtual Summit, experiencia de aprendizaje desarrollada por Best Innovation, partner estratégico de Singularity University en la región. El propósito de Singularity es empoderar a las personas en el conocimiento de las tecnologías exponenciales para el desarrollo de nuevos modelos que permitan resolver los grandes desafíos de la humanidad. Y mi propósito es democratizar el acceso a este conocimiento y poder contribuir a sembrar nuevas preguntas, nuevas miradas, a quienes diseñan las agendas de presente y futuro en América Latina. Es tremendamente relevante construir una narrativa positiva que nos permita prosperar como sociedad. Agradecemos a las más de 31.000 personas que se han conectado en toda América Latina, en distintas zonas horarias, y aquellas personas que no han tenido la oportunidad de unirse a las sesiones de Singularity U Virtual Summit, los invito a conectarse a nuestro sitio web y podrán acceder a todos los contenidos hasta el 14 de agosto. Los invito a todos los que tengan preguntas, quieran hacer comentarios, a que conversen con nosotros a través de el Facebook y nuestro canal de YouTube. Quiero agradecer también a cada uno de nuestros partners y especialmente a Corfo Bio Bio por hacer esta actividad posible. Hoy tenemos a un gran orador, él es Gordon Sandford, líder en transformación digital de Deloitte, Canadá. Hi, Gordon. How are you today?
Hi, Barbara. I'm great. How are you?
Very, very good. Where are you in this moment?
I am currently in my office in Toronto on a beautiful, sunny, hot day.
Wonderful. Well, we are in the middle of the winter. It's very cold in Chile, facing this pandemic. What are you going to talk about today?
Today, I'm very excited to be talking about a topic that I'm very passionate about, which is being digital in the next new normal.
Wonderful. Well, I will let you stay here, and I'll be back for the question and answer session.
Great. Looking forward to talking to you then.
Okay.
Thank you all for having me. I really appreciate it today, and I appreciate your patience in me presenting the news. I am working on the Spanish, but I don't think I'm at a point where I could present to you. So I will try to be deliberate in my conversation. I want to start off with a quick video, and then we'll dive right in.
A Blockbuster visit used to be part of everyone's weekend routine until Redbox, Netflix, and internet streaming came along.
For Borders, it is, yes, the end of the story.
Do you remember companies like these and how great they used to be? And then overnight they were gone due to a lack of evolution. Like so many other companies, they missed the shift to being digital. With the pace of technological change moving faster than ever, it's no surprise that 50% of Fortune 500 companies disappeared between 1999 and 2009, and unlikely competitors are popping up each day.
In terms of the chart, how does Tesla's chart look?
Over the next 12 to 18 months, we think this could be a $400 stock. That's where the projection would take us.
Organizations are trying to become digital, but are not sure what that means for them. The truth is, being digital is more than technology. It's a mindset. Think about the unlimited possibilities. Driverless cars becoming the safest on the road. Payments companies becoming technology solution providers to organizations and consumers. And additive manufacturing creating 3D products changing the role of the sales professional. The technology results, combined with the shifting in your leaders and workforce mindset, certainly wow when they get it right.
All I can say is wow. Domino's Pizza has done it again.
More than half of all sales are coming through digital platforms.
So what does it take to activate the digital organization? You start by defining your digital DNA, prioritizing the right traits required to move from exploring digital to being digital. Then accelerate your journey by defining the right network team structure, developing the digital-ready workforce to drive the future of work, and unleashing a high-impact digital HR partnership to deliver consumer-grade employee experiences. This type of change is different than your typical burning platform. You have to enable cognitive innovations while aligning your stakeholders, bringing together technology and mindset. Be bold, be disruptive, be digital. Are you ready?
Okay, so that's quite interesting because we are currently in this digital age, and I know that you guys there are getting it because I got several notifications already on my phone for connections on Twitter and LinkedIn. So that's just a demonstration. But I put this up to say, we are certainly in extraordinary times, and to me, I felt like we were in a revolutionary period before COVID. I think COVID may present a positive opportunity for some firms to really further themselves on this digital adventure. And so I want to take you on an adventure, and I hope this leaves you in a positive frame of mind to say, hey, there's a big opportunity associated with being digital. Just a little bit about myself. I've been at Deloitte for many, many years. Previous to about 15 to 10 years ago, I led our technology strategy practice here in Canada. It was pretty big, 450 people. And I used to help companies better get value out of IT or help IT leaders to better run as a business. But about 8 years ago, I led the launch of Deloitte Digital in Canada. And so not only have I been spending my time since then helping clients to achieve their digital aspiration, but I also spent a lot of time changing Deloitte and helping Deloitte to realize the new normal in Canada and building up a whole new set of competencies and capabilities. So I've been spending all my time immersed in this space, and I've lived this shift myself. So what are we really talking about? I think it's important to realize that we are in a new digital age, that yes, some technologies conspire to create a real business revolution, and everything has changed. Customer expectations are heightened in real time, where choice is expected to be infinite. We're on demand all the time. And yes, technology has leaned into everything we do. So yeah, there was a lot of technologies that kind of came together to create a big storm in the enterprise. And a lot of things matured at the same time. Mobile technologies, analytics, cloud, but they created a business revolution. And so what we're seeing is the scale of the change, the speed of the change, have created this new normal. And so for me, the first big realization is that digital isn't about technologies. Digital isn't a trend or a fad. It actually is a new normal. And we have seen this before. If you're my age, you saw the dot-com boom. If you're my age, you've seen the shift from mainframe to client server. But occasionally these technologies conspire to create a business revolution. And so for me, it's very important to realize that that's what happened during the digital age. It created a business revolution. So I think most organizations understand that to some extent. 87% of organizations that were polled in an MIT Sloan joint research with Deloitte found out that 87% believe their digital technologies will disrupt their industry, and only 44% feel they were adequately ready for the disruption. And I suspect that number is actually falling versus increasing as more and more organizations realize that there is the new normal and that they're not set up. So, digital isn't new. As I said, I've been at it for 8 years, and I've seen a lot of people do it wrong. So a couple of the big common mistakes are treating digital as a technology thing or as a technology implementation, or trying to organize their way out of digital by hiring a new chief digital officer and saying, okay, now that we have a chief digital officer, we must be digital. I've also seen a lot of organizations willing it onto their people or trying to strategy it. So I just did a project with a client where all their strategy work say they have to be more digital, but they hadn't really changed anything they do. So if you don't change any of the underlying constructs, you're not really going to be digital. So this book is this book is something I really love. It's one of my favorite books. I will be honest and say that it was written in joint with some academics and Deloitte leaders. So it's a Deloitte book, but The Technology Fallacy is a great book. And there's this really great analogy in the beginning of the book about the Wizard of Oz. And in the Wizard of Oz, it says this big tornado comes and takes Dorothy to this new land where it's all Technicolor and the rules are different. Now, the story of the Wizard of Oz is not about the technology, the tornado. The tornado was critical to the story. Without the tornado, you never had the story. But the real narrative is about how to get by in this new world where everything is Technicolors and the rules are different. And that is a good analogy for digital. Without the technology change, we wouldn't have had digital. But the real story now is how to get by in this new world. Okay, so what does it take to be successful? The way we look at it is organizations have to see, do, and be different to transform their businesses to be future ready. So this is really about how to set up your organization to be future ready. Okay, so let me break this down. I think the seeing part is really easy, and a lot of organizations are down that path. It's bringing outside in perspective. So this is things like looking to other industries for inspiration, looking to the startup community, partnering with the startup community, partnering with vendors or even other providers. But thinking outside the box in terms of where change might happen. And I think many organizations are doing that. They're looking at best practices around the world. They're trying to think about how to make their industry more Uber-like or more Airbnb-like. And they're experimenting. But this is where it gets a little harder. The being different. The doing different. So this is about thinking about how we do work. And to me, it's about three big shifts. It's about the move to being more agile. And with that, I'm not saying big A, agility. I'm saying not big A, methodology. I'm seeing going faster and being able to pivot and be flexible. So obviously being agile method can help with that. It's about really embracing human-centered design and really understanding unmet needs and friction in a much deeper way. And it's about having great experiences and great stories and a great narrative, emoting a really personal and emotional response. So organizations have to do differently as well. But I think the big challenge comes about being different. And you saw in the video that there are multiple steps to how to think about being different. And I'm going to focus in, for the sake of today, on the first three steps: defining the North Star, building the digital DNA, and and looking at the leadership. Okay, so let me say a couple things about the North Star. Firstly, I think what's different from strategy in the past, where we had to figure out where we're going to play and how we're going to win, is adding purpose, meaning, and ambition. What's it all for? What are we out to change? What's our impact in the world? Is important. And our workforce is predominantly millennials and Gen Zs, which dominate the workforce, are expecting a bigger purpose. But it's also about creating a more of a connection, a feeling that there's something bigger than just ROI. Now, one other big challenge that I see with organizations when they're trying to define their digital aspiration is, what does digital really mean? I think a lot of organizations are using the word digital, but haven't really figured out exactly what the definition is. To the finance CFO, it might mean streamlining operations, RPA, automation, removing inefficiencies. To the business leader, it could be around new experiences, engaging in new channels, launching new products and services across channels. To the CMO, it can often mean around our branding, our sentiment, and how we're going to reach clients and customers and stakeholders across different channels. To the chief strategy officer, it might be about new business models, new ecosystems. The truth is, it can be all of that. And to be honest, I think every organization needs its own definition. But what I see very commonly is that leaders are using the word digital without a common definition and a clear understanding of what that really means. And I would also just say, from my perspective, that aligning around it's a big culture, leadership, and human impact is actually at the core of it. So I just completed a digital strategy where we spent a whole workshop with the executive team aligning on the definition. And this particular organization put the human at the center and said, ultimately, what we're talking about here is a people change, a shift in the people. Now, my important takeaway on this slide is I think it's just important to align on a definition. I think digital involves all of these elements, but if that's not true for your enterprise, that's not of concern to me as much as it is to make sure that we are aligned. So this is a very simple model in our digital maturity. And what we see is many organizations that are doing digital, they're doing really cool things, maybe new channels, cloud DevOps, mobile apps, e-com, but they're not actually being digital. And they haven't really embraced new ways of thinking, new ways of doing. And one of the things I've said to colleagues is when you're up in this corner, in this little arrow, you're at a state where you're constantly reinventing and challenging. You know, you're constantly learning. Your organization is more comfortable being uncomfortable. That's when you kind of know you're digital. But many organizations are stuck doing interesting things, but not really achieving their aspiration. So how do you move from doing digital to being digital? For us, it starts with a very clear understanding that it's actually a behavior, culture, and mindset shift. We did a large study over many years with MIT Sloan that's talked about in the Technology Fallacy book. And we surveyed over 16,000 organizations and had several hundred C-suite interviews. And we uncovered a set of 23 traits. And I know it might be hard to read, but these 23 traits outline the characteristics of a successful digital organization. And so most organizations need to move the needle further up on many of these traits. Some that are often very interesting are this ability to be more iterative, to test and learn, to MVP and test out in the market. Continuous innovation, building a culture where we're challenging the norms and the orthodoxies and being disruptive to ourselves. Dynamic skill building. You know, a lot of us need to help our teams to be future ready. How do we build our skills in the flow of work? We talked about fluidity, which is that concept of agility, but really being fast, but also being able to move and flex and change. You know, synchronizing different ways of working, flattening and changing the hierarchy. And so we think many organizations need to take a proactive approach to shifting these 23 traits. And it starts with a mindset shift and a culture shift. Now, it's not enough to just think about it differently or behave differently. You need to build your organization to support these new behaviors. So we have this framework that I like to think about as the architecture of a business. There's 12 key levers that build your business, how it's structured, the physical space, the geography, what capabilities you have, you know, the processes, the technology, the governance, the talent, how you lead, what your policies are, how you reward people, how do you do performance management. You need to think about how do these levers turn to support the culture change that you're trying to make across the DNA traits. Otherwise, the change you're making will probably be overrun by the legacy culture, the legacy operating model of your company. So it's not enough just to think and be different. You have to revamp the organization as you go. Now, I also like to say that it's really shifted how we lead, that the old archetype of how we were leaders has changed. Leaders need to think, act, and react differently in this new digital age. It's not enough to say, I have a big, bold ambition, get on my back, I will make all the decisions, and I will be, you know, the front and center of the organization. We have to deal with increasing complexity where we might not know the future. We have to inspire and encourage our people and empower them to take bold moves. And we have to be brave in challenging how things done, tolerate an environment where risk-taking with ambiguity makes sense, show our resiliency in the face of change. And I think the whole COVID example has really shone a light on how we need to lead in the digital age. So this is quite daunting, because ultimately what I'm suggesting is that we really need to transform our organizations. And some organizations are very good at revolutionary change and others aren't. But I believe we're in a state where we need to transform while we're doing. In COVID times, in constrained environment times, it's been a very extraordinary period over the last year for many, many people. And it was not really a normal situation to begin with. And so we don't have time to stop and think about our transformation journey. We have to change the wheels while we're driving the bus. So it's a little bit more complicated. We need a big vision, but we need to get started. We need to enable leaders to see, do, and be different in this dynamic world. We have to pilot and start new ways of working and demonstrate examples with small teams and then scale quickly. We need to make big impact with right-sized journeys. Generate benefits faster with prototyping and testing, being iterative and getting the market with MVPs and then scaling from there. And then we need to think about how we're going to build new competencies and capabilities to make the change sustaining in the new world. So we have to transform by doing. So lessons learned from others who have done it well. Leaders need to think about how much control they're willing to give up. Many legacy organizations filter way too many decisions to steer closer to the executive team. We need to empower our knowledge workers to own the outcomes, make more judgment, and move forward. We really need to prepare and think about the change journey. How are we going to prepare our stakeholders for this leap? It's not going to be comfortable for a lot of people. And how are we going to manage through that change? We want to build the structure around customers and stakeholders, be succinct, look for feedback, and be fluid and be willing to adjust. We're going to have to shift that balance of oversight and autonomy and enable our teams to show us the way. I used to say when I was leading digital at Deloitte, ignite the passion, fan the flames, and get out of the way. Our people understand how to be digital. We need to let them expose it to us and provide employees with the right development and growth opportunities to enable them to try new skills, to behave in new ways, and to try new ways of thinking and working. I think it's about thinking big. You have to have a big aspiration, a purpose, and a meaning. You have to have a North Star. My client just recently said, and I love this phrase, the North Star has to be bright enough to guide us, but it also has to be clear enough to help us make trade-off decisions. So we have to think big, but then we have to get started. We can't over-engineer. We start small, we build on success, and we scale what's working and we rethink what's not. Think big, start small, and scale sustainably. So that comes to the end of my conversation with you. I'm very open to questions and feedback. I'd really like you to push and challenge me in any way. So I'd like to welcome Barbara back and address any of the questions that you might have.
Thanks very much, Gordon, for your amazing presentation. And you mentioned very important things, like think big, start small, scale sustainable, pivot, be flexible, embrace human-centered design, build great narratives, and being different. That is very challenging in this time of uncertain times. And one of the biggest challenges organizations of all sizes are facing today is the need of their business model transformation. But they are stuck because they don't know where and how they can start. What would you recommend to them?
Yeah. So I think there's 3 recommendations I would make for them. And I think first point is to recognize that that it is a business revolution and you need to get started. So that's a victory number 1. I think number 2 is to embrace that it is really a human change at the core of it, not to get too confused with technologies. We need the technologies, they're important, but the technologies alone are not going to create the business revolution. So make sure we're thinking about that human component. And then I think it needs just the third thing that I would say to the group here, because I think the people that attend Singularity are the right example. We need leaders to go and lead by example and show people the new way and be willing to try new things, be vulnerable and try different things to demonstrate that we all have to change.
Thanks, Gordon. We have a question from Gabriel Bustamante. He's in the audience. And he is asking the following: how can current leaders quickly acquire new capabilities required by the current digital dynamics installed in the world?
Right. And this is a really great question, Gabrielle, and one I've been dealing with a lot. So I had a lot of clients that say, where can I go hire all these digital people? I want to bring in new competencies. And certainly we need to think about where we build competencies. We talk about, I saw a colleague just the other day who said something really interesting: warm and cold and hot competencies. So a hot skill would be someone who's an FTE or works for us. And a warm might be a gig worker or a contractor or a partner that we use to bring new skills. And then cold might be something we automate. We might automate processes so that we don't have to worry about it anymore. So we need to think about the landscape of capabilities as being more than just full-time employees. But I maintain that we also need to build a plan to help our employees to build the new skills for the digital age. I think that expecting others to come into your organization and be the catalyst for all that change is unfair. They don't know the culture, they don't know the business as well. And I believe that we have an ability to change and upskill and create competencies in many of the people in our organization. I kind of always say it's sort of like a third. I think there's 1/3 of the organization that is dying for the change, that can't believe we aren't more digital. Then there's a third that says they believe there is a change out there, but they're very worried about how to get there. And there may be another third that says, I've seen this before and nothing's going to change. And I think we need to really focus on the first 2 groups of people and help them build competencies and then show the rest of the way to people. So I think it's a multi-pronged attack of looking to infuse new competencies from other areas, but also helping your team to build skills in the flow of the work they're doing. So much more lifelong learning and training in the flow of work is important.
Thanks, Gordon. We have another question from Felix Lastra. He said, thanks, Gordon, for your great presentation. How long do you think will last this period of organizational and business adaptation to the new post-pandemic transformation?
Wow. That's a great question, Felix. I'm going to take it in 2 perspectives. If you asked me before COVID, sort of when will we stop talking about digital transformation? I probably think I actually used to predict in a couple more years. But I would say that doesn't mean that digital is over. It just means we should have all adapted. So we're not going back to pre-digital times ever again. So I do think there is a half-life. And I also think that we've seen that while I believe right now it's a very human era, it's likely that technologies will conspire again to create another revolution. But I think we have a multi-year run with just digital. Now, COVID has introduced a new catalytic event. It's created yet another new normal. And to me, it's scary and it's quite interesting. It's the largest social experiment in the world. But like I started with my first slide that says, I think it can be a positive adventure. COVID has helped us to challenge a lot of orthodoxies and norms and practices that we never thought we could change. People are much more willing to try things. And so the digital transformation that I think we wanted to introduce, it's actually a really good time to do it. I think people are more willing to face that change. I also think with COVID that we will not go back to what it's like pre-COVID, that when the virus isn't threatening anymore, things will have changed, and we'll be using distributed technologies to be more collaborative. We'll learn what it's like to work more from home or work more distributed. And so I think both are creating a new normal. And I think COVID is just, can be a catalyst, can be an event that helps us infuse that business transformation around digital. So I hope that answers the question.
Thanks very much, Gordon. We have another question from Carlos Pinto. In terms of the business model, how do you involve stakeholders and especially suppliers in order to develop a sustainable digital transformation?
Okay, that's very interesting. And I love this question. I think this is a very significant change program. And I think we misuse change management to do things like tech adoption, technology awareness. I think this is a much deeper change program. So I think organizations really need to think about how you're going to move the DNA and how are you going to change your culture of your org. Now, I love what you said around suppliers and vendors and outside stakeholders. I think it's very important to share with them your journey, your expectations. So spell out the North Star and the aspiration. Show them those digital DNA traits that you're expecting to change and that you want to work in a different way, and lean on them to help to be a catalyst for change. What I've been doing very openly on a lot of Deloitte projects, even if it's implement an e-commerce platform or, open up this new line of business, I keep saying to people, let us also help you build new competencies and capabilities. Let us help you train your people to think about human-centered design or to think about innovation or agility, how to really be agile. So I think you can lean on vendors and suppliers to help infuse that change, but also help you build competencies and capabilities inside your organization as well, and help provide some of those extra competencies and capabilities as a part of a partnership.
Great. Thanks, Gordon. We have another question from Maria Jose Aldunate. How can you make sure that the whole culture is going to change with the digital transformation? Not just the leaders of the company or the particular area which is developing this transformation.
Very good. And I think this is a really interesting point because a lot of companies created a digital area or a digital innovation lab. And I really didn't love that. I think if you create an area where the cool people and the digital folks and they get to drink Red Bull and sit on beanbag chairs, if you don't purposely try to infect change in the rest of the organization. I always used to say before the pandemic, I used to say infect the host. Purposely try to make that change. So don't set up a special cool kid area. Set up an area that has the mandate to make the change. That's point one. One other thing in your question, though, is to me, it really has to start with leaders. Leaders have to demonstrate that they are acting in a new way, that they are in bringing culture change. I think in many cases, I would say one of the biggest gaps was that not all leaders bought into the change. Maybe they thought the digital guy should be different, but the CFO or the COO wasn't willing to be different. And I think the key is to start from the top all the way through to start demonstrating and being change agents. One of the things that we've done to great effect is when I'm running being digital labs or leadership labs with my clients, I often end the day with a commitment card. I give them all a card and I say, what is the one thing you're going to do to be digital tomorrow? And we make them all sign it because I'm trying to make them understand, or actually even better, sometimes we made them film a video, a selfie of them themselves saying, this is how I'm going to be different, and really participate in the change. So I think it goes top to bottom, and you need to think about there is no part of the org that doesn't have to change. You can't say, oh, but the back office can stay the same. They're not digital. It won't work if we all don't embrace this new normal.
Oh, wonderful Gordon. We have another question from Daniel Page. How do you know which is the right balance of oversight and autonomy? Which signs you need to take into account to respond effectively without creating avoidable side effects?
So interesting, because I think you almost answered your own question. So it's very hard for me to say, this is the spot where you have the right balance. And even in your organization, suppose we figured it out, it'll move. So I think why I said you answered your own question, Daniel, is because I think constant monitoring is important. Are we infecting the change that we wanted to see? Are we having the outcomes that we wanted to have? Are we making the change that we wanted to see? And then learning, what are the levers that we need to pull to change based on that? So we always used to say, like, leveraging from agile principles, stop and doing that retrospective, that look back and say, is it working and is it not? And what do we need to shift is really important. And then thinking about all those levers that you have, the 12 levers or all those traits, and saying, what do we need to shift here? I'm feeling that we're not making the change because the leaders aren't involved. We have to get more leadership involvement. So I think the key is to focus on continuous monitoring and making sure that you have mechanisms in place where you're going to have to make some shifts. It'd be nice to lay out a 3-year strategy with all the steps and just say, if you do all that for 3 years, you'll be digital. The reality is it'll move as we go. It's good to have a plan. It makes a lot of people comfortable, but you got to understand it's going to shift as we go. So you got to be able to pivot.
Mm-hmm. Thanks very much. We have another question from Alicia Reyes. We have a great question here. Please give us your insight about the impact in the way the digital transformation would impact the company's strategic planning process.
Oh boy. Okay, this is a really, and Barbara, I'm wondering if we talked about this, because yes, it's a very important question to me, because I think the strategic planning process at a lot of organizations is one of the biggest barriers to being digital. And when I talk about the strategic planning process, I want to break it into 2 elements. One is sort of the process of building strategies and annual plans. And then the second part is the process of doing business cases and budgeting and funding. And I think those are 2 of the most core processes in any company. Like, that really comes down to how you run your company. And I think the processes for those 2 things are broken. And I've made a vow to change that. And that could be the thing that kills me in my career, but I'm going to make a change. We need to get more iterative in our planning process. And as I said, it's not bad to have a 3-year plan, but you need to think about it. I mean, this year is obvious. If you went through your whole planning process and then COVID happened, I hope you're not still running the same strategy. You need to rethink it. But there was a whole bunch there was civil unrest. There's a whole bunch of reasons increasingly why you need to rethink it. So it needs to be more of a continuous cycle. And we need to think about the funding process and the budgeting process differently. What a lot of organizations used to do is come up with an idea, then do requirements for a long, long time until they got a very exact business case, which would be a pro forma of a balance sheet and an income statement and an ROI that was way too exact. Because at the beginning of any project, there's a range of outcomes, and it could be a 2% gain or a 20% gain. What we need to do is think about what's that smallest piece of work that we could do that'll prove the assumptions that I made in the business case and demonstrate if I need to keep going. So we need to get much more iterative, but that's a massive change to the way we do business casing. So, Alicia, I think you've hit on one of the key things. Like, we need to start thinking about changes to the business planning process.
Okay, great advice, Gordon. Enrique Albayay has another question. New normal will also be the time before the next crisis. How would you explain current leaders the importance of the digital transformation to handle well the next crisis?
Yeah, I mean, I think if we said, say you were one of the Fortune top 50 companies and .com happened and you ignored it, you probably don't exist right now. There was a massive shifting. Same with digital, right? If we have companies that want to continue to say it doesn't apply to me. And we have all those classic examples, right? Like Hyatt Hotels would say, buying hotel property is super expensive and we've got all the best properties in the world. Like what kind of company could start up and disrupt this? Well, Airbnb could. Airbnb has more rentals before COVID than anyone else. Or you could have said the same thing about the taxi industry in New York City. It's super expensive. It's super monopolized. There's no way an outsider could disrupt it. So I think if you're not believing in it, my concern is you won't even be here for the next crisis. Certainly there are organizations like mining companies and things like that where there's a lot more to it than just being digital. But I still think if you're a mining company and you're not thinking about where IT meets OT and how to automate and how to be digital, then you're not going to be competitive as rates move with commodities for other firms that have been competitive. So, the crises are cyclical. When you get to my age, they happen every once in a while, and they're actually pretty predictable. If you're not far down the digital transformation by the time the next one hits, you're only going to be further behind.
Great. Thanks, Gordon. We have another question from Pablo Calvo. How flexible should be a business model to adapt to the new normal? Is this a definite process or it's a circular process?
Well, yeah, I think it's a constant circular process of rediscovery and reinvention. So if you said to me, I want to create a flexible business model now, and then I will never look at it, that almost doesn't make sense. But I think the point is we don't know necessarily all the changes that will always happen. We need to be constantly ready to, I think one of the big shifts of this transformation is the importance of really being able to address those rules, those orthodoxies that we think rule our company or our industry, and be able to ask, what if that wasn't true? What if that changed? What if we changed it? What if we changed it on others? What would that do to us? So, and look, we can't change org structures and everything every 5 minutes. Like, you need some constancy, and people need some constancy, but you need to be willing to challenge those very core assumptions that you've made, or at least make sure that they still apply. The assumptions that we built 2 years ago, do they still apply? Let's ask ourselves that more often.
Mm-hmm. Yes, companies has a challenge to rethink their purpose because the purpose they had in the past, it doesn't fit in this new digital age. I will end with a great question from Diego Torres. Is about moonshots, which is all about Singularity University. So do we need more top leaders committed to moonshots like Kennedy in 1961 to transform our culture toward thinking big at every level?
Well, look, moonshots are big moonshots, and I don't know that every organization can stomach the investment in multiple of those and not achieve the result. But I do think that what I've said earlier from the start is we need to start with a big, bold aspiration. It needs to be purposeful enough and meaningful enough to inspire our people to really change and transform. So, and I feel like when Kennedy made that statement in 1961, American people galvanized around that. They took a very bold objective, and then they actually started to make big changes to support it. And so that part, I believe for sure. And this is, Barbara, your point around what's changed. Millennials, Gen Zs, for sure. We have proof that, and by the way, they're the largest part of the workforce. There's only 6% of the workforce in North America are boomers anymore. They need purpose and aspiration. What is it all for, and what's the meaning? So I believe that what I would say is more leaders need to be committed to a big, meaningful purpose that is inspirational as well as strategic, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Thanks very much, Gordon, for your presentation, for your insights, and share your ideas and Deloitte's ideas. And would you like to say some final words to the audience? We have people connected from all Latin America in this moment.
Yes, and so I would just say thank you all for being patient with my English. I really hope to build my competency enough to be able to do a conversation like this in Spanish. I am also very much looking forward to when travel opens up again so I can visit my colleagues in not only Santiago, but in other parts of Latin America where I love to visit and spend time. So I really appreciate your time and attention today, and I hope I can reciprocate and come and spend time with you in your space and help you to demonstrate to the rest of Latin America what digital can be and show the world. I don't know why we can't aspire to have Latin and South America to demonstrate the way. I think places like the US and UK have too much orthodoxy to move, and maybe the best world example should come from South America, and I'd love to come be part of that with you. So thank you very much for your time.
Thanks very much, Gordon. And we will add subtitles to your presentation, so we will share to all the audience too.
Thanks.
So have a great day. Y quiero invitar a cada uno de ustedes que están conectados a la próxima sesión con Mick Mann, que nos va a hablar de realidad virtual y el futuro del empleo. También quiero agradecer a cada uno de nuestros partners por hacer este evento online posible. Muchísimas gracias.
Podemos contarte 175 años de historia en el mundo, donde hemos pasado por guerras, crisis y revoluciones. En Chile ya cumplimos 96 años de vida y también hemos vivido grandes cambios económicos y sociales. Hoy, con el poder de un legado vigente, sabemos cómo actuar junto a nuestros clientes, siempre construyendo confianza. Porque si algo hemos aprendido en estos años, es que si vas solo, tal vez puedas ir más rápido, pero juntos podemos llegar más lejos.